All right. Excellent. Welcome, Plattsburgh, to a special edition of the Hurwitz Lab. I'm Craig Hurwitz. This November, Plattsburgh city voters have an important decision to make, choosing the next mayor of the city of Plattsburgh. Who will Plattsburgh pick to steer us out of one of the most difficult times in our city's history? Today, we're here with entrepreneur, business owner, and county legislator for Area 9 in his second term, the Honorable Chris Rosenquest. We're very lucky to have Matt Waite, who's the Assistant Public Defender for Essex County, and photographer and videographer Damian Battinelli to round out our panel. Chris Rosenquest, thank you so much for coming to speak with us today.
No, thank you.
When you decided to run for mayor, we had no idea we'd be dealing with a pandemic.
Yeah, no doubt.
The game has changed. We're in a crisis.
Yep.
And the health and safety and the economy of our city are in the balance.
Yeah, absolutely.
And how has this changed your vision and the direction regarding short and long-term plans for Plattsburgh?
Yeah, and that's sorry, that is a question that we haven't quite addressed as a community, in terms of the next level of leadership and where we're going with the next level of leadership, because that's key. And it's key to, make sure that whoever takes that role, they have the experience, they have the wherewithal, they have the understanding of how government can get out of this. And so, when we put together our plan for Plattsburgh, that really for us was the guiding principle for having people understand, hey, we're ready to do this, and we need to be ready to do this. It's not something that we can get in January and say, well, what do we do now? We've got to go in with a plan. And so that's when we put together the plan for Plattsburgh. It really takes a hard look at how are we going to get out of this, how we're going to grow out of this, because it is a growth opportunity as well, as an opportunity to look at partnerships and collaboration internally and externally.
Because looking at the updates, I read through the plan.
Yeah, thank you.
And it was nice detail. You put a lot of work and effort into that.
Absolutely.
And, going through the updates, these updates were done in recent months. Mm-hmm. And, tourism is so important. I'm talking to bar owners. I played, a little music this morning, and they're struggling because, they can't even open for small music locally. And, I'm a musician, a part-time musician, but these are tough times for even those owners, and to talk about growing tourism, a lot of these things is falling on a deaf ear right now because these people are just trying to get to the next day.
Yeah, and tourism is certainly one thing that we talk about as Plattsburgh's low-hanging fruit, especially when we look at, as a municipality, how do we grow our revenue stream, and tourism is one of those ways that we can significantly do that. So with a pandemic and with travel restricted, we do depend a lot on the Montreal traffic. The border's closed.
Right.
So, as a partner, and a legislator with the Chamber of Commerce, I've been their legislative liaison for the last 5 years. So I've had a hand in developing our regional tourism growth opportunities and strategy for how do we create Plattsburgh as a destination, because we are a destination. It's people come here to visit us. People come here to stay. They come here to enjoy our lakes, beaches, and rivers, waterfront, and Adirondack Mountain, and we highlight that. And we've highlighted that in such a way that we see it. Our revenue grow through sales tax. We see revenue grow through occupancy tax. And that is the work that we've been doing over the last 5-10 years. Now, with COVID as a mix, there's been a strong strategy to promote local, because that's the opportunity now. So in partnership with the Chamber, that's where we've been focused.
And that makes a lot of sense when you look at even the things that we do well with tourism, which are like the marinas, they're at 20%. All the big boaters who come and they vacation here and they spend their money here. Mm-hmm. They're not here, so that's interesting to go with more local, focusing on local.
Right, and that is the opportunity for us as a municipality in a region to grow by investing internally. Otherwise, we're also not traveling a lot. So, and for us to say, okay, we want to thrive locally, we want to grow our business locally, we want to see those businesses and restaurants stay open. We need to also contribute to that as well. As a downtown business owner, I see it every single day. People coming out to shop at our coffee shop rather than going to a national chain, and we appreciate it. And that's the kind of sentiment that we've been promoting in terms of tourism regionally and locally.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Thanks. Matt, do you want to?
Yeah, I just wanted you to pick up on the financing aspect, because I think that's one of the stark differences between you and your opponent here is the background in financing. So talk a little bit about your history of working with I think you were on the finance committee of the county legislature.
Yeah, so my legislative committee appointments, my appointments range between health, children and family, transportation. But my two committee chair appointments, I've been the chair of the Economic Development County Operations Committee, which that committee focuses on regional economic development and regional economic development opportunities in partnership with Town of Plattsburgh, the TDC, the Development Corporation, the Chamber of Commerce. And we look at these opportunities for public-private partnerships that we can develop over time, either immediate or, over the next 20, 30 years. For example, the $38 million investment that went into our airport. I was part of that task force that, I was part of that task force that developed the plan to get that award into our community, and which part of that is investment into the city of Plattsburgh, because part of the development did happen in the city of Plattsburgh for the airport. But then also I've been the chair of the finance committee. And I was the chair of the finance committee for 2 years, and that's not easy. You need to understand the nuances of budgeting. You need to understand the nuances of negotiation with department heads who they've got to pay their bills. And so when they make a proposal to say, hey, we want to buy a new piece of equipment, you as a legislator and as the chair, you've got to work with the budget officer to say, do we really need that? Is that something that we really need, or is it something that we can find another way to get that? What kinds of grants are available to offset some of the county's operational expenses? And so, as the chair of the finance committee, we even as a legislator or a quote unquote politician, you always look to better the community, and you take those small wins and you can say, look, this is what I did, this is what I helped do. So, as the chair of the finance committee, I chaired the committee to lower the county's tax rate to the lowest that it's been in the last 9-10 years, which is fantastic, right? It's fantastic for our entire community, and that impacts the city of Plattsburgh, Peru, any municipality in the county. So, besides the legislative experience in finance and budgeting, it's what I do for work, right? Companies ask me to come in and help them grow. Part of that is financial analysis, budgeting analysis, understanding their books, and seeing where they're spending more money than they need to, or where they could be making more money. And that is also a key function of a mayor's position, right? The mayor, even though you have a chamberlain, you have a CFO, you still need to have that skill set, and you need to have an intimate knowledge of that skill set to be effective at what you do.
I think that's really well said. Just a little bit of humility, which not everyone gets from me. In high school, I was, watching my friends take accounting courses, and I was really good at math, and I was kind of like, accounting, really?
Give me a break.
Yeah, and then I, volunteered to become the treasurer of the Clinton County Democratic Committee, and I found out very quickly how accounting is not nearly as easy as everyone thinks it is. So I think that's an important thing to highlight, is that you're coming in with a ton of budgeting and accounting experience.
And that's important.
Yeah, no disrespect, but I don't think your opponent has much of any of that, and we don't necessarily want to focus on the negatives there, but I think it's certainly a positive and a distinction that you want to make.
Yeah, and it is, and I think that's the key distinction that I think everybody and all of our voters should be concerned over is what are the basic skill set, or the basic set of skills, or the basic experience a mayor should have. And I'd say, look, people management. You need to have people management, not just supervisory skill, not just, I supervised a team of people to do X, Y, and Z, but management. You have to understand what it's like to fire somebody.
Yeah, without to get too much into the weeds, I think over the last 4 years we found out that wasn't as what we expected, I think.
Right, exactly, and that's right. You nail on the head right there. That's spot on the concern that a lot of us have is you have somebody who is very skilled in a particular field, but they're not skilled in the field that is required by a mayor.
Do you feel like you're? I mean, you have an MBA.
Yeah, that's right.
Right
that's
from Foster School of Business,
University of Washington Foster School of Business.
Right, I mean, and
gotta
so
plug it. Gotta
plug it. And I think your education is important. And look, in these things, they broaden your base. They make you
that's right.
more analytical with certain things, and you understand how to use data.
Yeah, that's right.
And how to use that data to improve quality for quality improvement programs.
That's right. And it's not, look, we can look at the numbers as ones and zeros. But from a business perspective, I take a triple bottom line approach. People, planet, profits. You got to look at it as a holistic system. You can't just say, I'm going to cut this, or I'm going to shave that, or I'm going to invest in this, I'm going to spend money in that. You also have to look at what does that do to the people, our community? What does that do to our city employees?
Trickle down effect.
It's a lot of that impact, right? Because it's not just numbers. Those numbers have people, they have projects, they have initiatives. And these are generational impacts when you start to make impacts like that. So you have to understand not just the numbers and how to balance the numbers, but what the numbers are telling, what story that you're trying to tell with a budget, what story are you trying to tell with the type of investment monies that you're making as a community. And that's the vision that you have to bring to the office. Otherwise, it's you're just going to sit in a chair and hope that you figure it out along the way, and it's not something that we can risk at this point, especially in a pandemic.
Well said. And to name names, I mean, Colin, I think, who obviously is who we're talking about, did an excellent job, I think, on the numbers. I mean, I think the budget when he came in was in perilous position, and he did really good on getting us into a position, I think, where we can pivot now. So can you talk a little bit about that now? Because this is kind of the elephant in the room of many, is kind of the town-city relationship. I mean, even Colin, I think, was very kind of candid in saying, the city of Plattsburgh may have an expiration date, right? I mean, at some point, I think he did kind of say that we have to explore, working with the town, and what can the city do to be unique and to provide services that because cities are so important. I think we know that, and developing, tourism, culture, arts, things of that nature. That's right. So can you kind of try and tie those together a little bit?
If I can just interject, I would also love to hear why, in your opinion, should we stay as a city? Why?
Yeah, I mean, I relay it this way: we're not going anywhere. Neither is the town of Plattsburgh. Not in anytime soon. I think there's an opportunity to start to blur the lines a little bit, right? And we're already blurred by name. Even the majority of I'd swear to say the majority of the people who live here can drive past the town city line and not know that they just drove past through the city or the town. Quite frankly, there are people
all the time.
Yeah, it happens all the time. And there's still people that live here, grew up here, that have never been to the beach. You know what I mean? So it's one of those things where it's okay, well, and rightfully so, our approach needs to look like that too. Our approach to sharing services needs to look like that, but it's baby step. We're not gonna dissolve. We're not gonna consume the town. The town's not gonna consume us. Not in anytime soon. But what we can do is we can start to blur the lines a little bit. We can start to say, what are the low hanging fruit for shared services, recreation, infrastructure development, and shared infrastructure investment. We provide this town of Plattsburgh's water sewer treatment, and there's 5 different lines that come into the city that treat town wastewater. But when you look at how do you expand that, just an idea, not to say this is something I would pursue, but an idea is Cumberland Head, for example. Cumberland Head is septic. And why not take a look in partnership with the town to invest in wastewater system out there? It's not our municipality, but we would also benefit from it, as would they, right? And as would the citizens on the head. So there's a question, as an example, right? But recreation is also part of that. We have ball fields, we have facilities, we have space, we have a beach that we can leverage for recreational opportunities, and we can partner with the town to do that, and we can partner with the county to administer some of those things. And those are low-hanging fruit for us. So when you look at that regional growth and that regional partnerships, those are the kinds of things that we can start with. Then it turns into, well, who's paving whose roads? Well, let's share that. Or who's installing lights throughout the town and the city? Well, let's share that. or along those lines. And that's a way to start to grow our communities together, and a means to create jobs for both of our communities.
How do you feel your relationship is with the county? Or not the county, the town.
My relationship with the county is impeccable.
But I did want to point out, like,
The town.
Yeah.
I mean,
yeah. No, I just got off the phone with Mike Cashman today, right? Like talking about the annexation issue, and we could talk about that too, and we want to talk about that because again, it just talking about these issues goes back to being mayor on day one. Like it's not about getting into office and then ramping up to try to understand the issue and try to get out of it. It's on day one. This is what we're going to do. And so I have a great relationship with Michael and with several of their board members. They know me, right? And when I went to that annexation meeting on last Thursday, it was the same. It's very professional. It's very personal. I've worked with them on a number of projects over the last 5-6 years. Even before I was elected, I've worked with the town on a number of quality of life issues. So, Again, it's not something I've been working on over the last 8 months to build that relationship. It's something that I have and I will continue to have on day one. So.
And I think it's kind of obvious based on the discussion that we just had, but maybe you want to just expound a little bit on how you think being a county legislator already and being aware of these county issues and how the town and the city interact gives you such an advantage over someone else coming in.
Yeah, I mean, like I think the advantage lies a lot in understanding the issue and being involved with issues and having been involved with issues over the last 5 years. And that's one of the reasons why I saw the opportunity to run for county legislators, because I was doing projects in the community. We were doing art projects. We helped with the mandala installation downtown as the Plattsburgh Renewal Project. We started the film festival. Yeah, that's right. Film festival downtown. We had ward walks, which was like a little bit more like lower key, but it was opportunity for community to get together to walk through our community and to understand what we have, like the beauty that we have. But as a legislator, I have a little bit more influence and a little bit more say in impacting not only the city of Plattsburgh, but also the region. And as a legislator, I wish I had the list on me, but there's been hundreds of thousands of dollars of monies that we brought into the city just for city quality of life projects, just for art projects or community projects, small businesses.
You mean through grant?
Through grant, like through the Economic Development and County Operations Committee and through the Finance Committee, right?
If you're lucky enough to become mayor, will you take those damn digital maps down?
Oh,
the kiosks, or
dude, they kill me, man. Dude, seriously,
dude.
It's ridiculous. Still,
I can hear them buzzing.
No, you can. You can. They are buzzing. They're kind of like, something. What is going on with this thing? Do you know what we're talking about?
No,
there's like these metal kiosks that are kind of
just rusting now.
Yeah, they're kind of like dotted around our downtown.
That's so funny.
It's just like those things are, they're in the background, But when you see it, you're like, it's like garbage on the street, right? Mm-hmm. Like you see a piece of garbage, you want to pick it up. And those things just like they highlight where our failures are, or where we're not living up to something, living up to a future that we strive for. Right. And so those even small things like that, small improvements like that, go a very long way for just the pride that we have in our community, right? And I think that's key for us. That's key to understand. We were talking about like who we are, like who do we define ourselves to be, or how do we grow in this economy? And part of that is understanding who we are, understanding that we're not likely not going to have land for large scale industrial manufacturing like the town does, right? But we have a beach that the town doesn't have. We have a river, a fantastic river that goes right through our city that the town doesn't have. And we can capitalize on these things to really define who we are in the region. And so when you talk about tourism and growth and economic development opportunities, that's what we talk about.
I like your idea. I mean, that to me triggers, it's a concept that I love, is that what you've said is something I haven't heard a lot of other people say, which is really starting off by saying, who are we? How do we identify ourselves? And then kind of building from there. That's how you move forward with the business model.
No, really. That's
because people get too diffuse. Yeah. We get caught up. I mean, there's important things that need to be done, but from at least a tourism standpoint and some ways to really get our community to thrive.
Right.
I just feel like there are things missing in the town that are such incredible resources here.
Things missing in the city.
Yeah, in the city is what I meant.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. Just making sure.
Yes.
There it is.
Got to represent the brand.
There it is.
Yes.
But I'll tell you that and I say this, you probably have heard me say this, and I'm going to keep saying it. You drive into the city in this big, beautiful blue sign that says, "Welcome to the city of Plattsburgh, the Lake City."
Right.
And then you go to the lake and you're like, what is this?
How do I get to the lake?
Yeah.
Where do I go?
Or when you get there, you're like,
Wait
a second
there's
here.
a trains.
Yeah. You know, so that's that again, when you talk about that identity, even though I have a really strong business background and I've helped people grow business, I've grown my own business, and I say, okay, who are you? Who are you as a business? What kind of business or what kind of approach do you want to convey? What's your marketing? What's your brand? The same thing goes with our city. What's our brand? Who are we? What are we providing to people? What's our value proposition? If I can drop a business buzzword, part of that is defining that. And as much as, you know, I look and there are a couple people that understand that really are tuned in and keyed into who we are. I think as a community, we're not. As a collective community, I don't think we're keyed into who we are. And just because we haven't had this kind of conversation before, we haven't had this kind of visioning conversation before about defining who we are as a community. But I'll tell you that just like in business, just like in your personal life, once you define what your priorities are, that's when you start to line up your resources to fulfill those priorities. You know, if you're like, man, I need to go to the gym. Guess what? You're going to buy some weights. You're going to buy some shorts to run in. You're going to hire a trainer. You're going to align yourself with fulfilling on that future or fulfilling on that possibility. And that's what the plan for Plattsburgh is, helping drive that fulfillment of that future. And that's the kind of campaign that we're talking about here.
Have you looked to other revitalizing waterfront communities is not new.
No,
I mean, this is something that's been done in many places. The Great Lakes. There's a lot. I was reviewing it just to kind
Troy,
of
New York.
Yeah, and it's like, how do we don't need to reinvent the wheel per se. I mean, we get some ideas. Have you looked at other communities as a model, for example?
Well, maybe not so much as a model, but you look to see, man, that's a cool thing that community has.
Right.
Why can't we have that?
Yeah.
We can have that. That's easy. That's easy enough to do. Or you look at, I've lived in, San Francisco, Minneapolis, Seattle, big cities that do things great and they do things horribly.
Right.
But you look at the things that they do great and you look at other communities that do great things and what they're doing great. And you're like, we can do that. We can easily do that. And it's not difficult to understand that we can do that. It's just now a matter of, I talk about moving us from that thing that we talk about all the time. We've got so much potential. Our city has so much potential, but we just have that. We don't have the action to take us from the potential to realizing that potential or realizing that future. And that's pushing us in that direction. And that's what my campaign wants to do come January 1.
Yeah, no, all that sounds great. I think one of the issues that I'm finding, and maybe we can segue a little bit here to a more controversial issue, is regional development as a whole and how you do it, whether or not you do it as kind of I guess what's been described by some as like the big shiny object versus a more organic approach. Because I think we were kind of referencing some of the beautiful things about Plattsburgh that we did kind of on an incremental approach of the film festival and outside art. I mean, Amy Guglielmo and Julia Devine,
Yep.
they are absolutely doing amazing work here in the community.
100%.
And those things I feel like are improving the value of our city without doing a whole lot, right? We're honestly just painting paint on the side of a building,
but
it makes a huge difference. And then, maybe on the backside of this, want to talk a little bit about Prime, because I know that, the big concern with Prime, I think, is that it's kind of a one at it. Like, we only get one shot with this $4.3 million. And, the Albany firm's coming in with, I think, $25 million of outside money.
Yeah.
So the big concern is that, how do you do development? Do you do it as kind of an organic approach and kind of pick and choose and really focus on things like you mentioned, like access to the lake and things of that nature?
Yeah.
Or do you look to more bringing in outside contractors toward big ideas, toward something like Prime, where you're obviously bringing in a lot of money and it sounds like they have a lot of good things that they're looking to do as far as increasing housing capacity, commercial space, etc. So just take us along on your thoughts and philosophy.
It's a balance of both, right? We part of it is, as a community, we don't have a strong track record of development. We don't have a strong track record of creating a comprehensive plan that will outline what we're going to do over the next 30 years, right? Now we're in the midst of that. And that's also a concern, and that should be a concern for all of our voters right now, because we're in the midst of creating a comprehensive master plan, which revises our lakefront plan, our lakefront revitalization plan, and it also that process also revises our zoning and planning laws. Now, in 2013, I called for a wholesale revision of our zoning and planning. So now we're 7 years later doing that work, and it's going to ideally take another 8 months.
When was the last time it was revised?
Right around 1999, I think, right around there, right when the air base closed and we had like Bombardier, and that's probably like the biggest.
We're going on 21 years.
Right, exactly. And in 21 years, it's a lifetime.
Has anything changed?
Well, yeah. I mean, like, but part of our opportunity, again, it's like, being named like the top 20, the top 40 micropolitan, by Forbes magazine or whatever, right? Like, you can look that up. But again, that just talks about the potential that we have. Mm-hmm. It doesn't talk about what we're actually doing or how we realize that potential. So when you talk about the primes or the large-scale hotel developments that's being proposed down on Harborside, those are good things, right? Those are positive things in the sense that people are looking at our community in a way that they see value. So they see the value of our community, right? However, what's not good about it is that, one, we don't have a track record of successful development in the city in that nature, of that scope, and the approach that we've taken to that has been detrimental to the success of that project. So just the lack of community engagement.
Where would you give an example of where it hasn't worked?
Well, prime. It just hasn't, like that whole process that we've gone through of receiving money, $10 million, which is, everybody thought that was going to be a great thing. And $6 million of it has been, right? But then just the lack of engagement or the lack of planning that has surrounded that project has been unfortunate. And that's putting it in a nice way, right? Because it had that project and had the engagement for that project been more involved, more understanding of what we wanted as a community, and primarily had the mayor at the time been a cheerleader for the community and for making sure that project gelled with the community, we would be like well along, right? Because now we're going into likely the third administration with this project, right? Jim Callan,
he got
Mayor
the grant,
Reed,
right?
And then whoever's next, right? Ideally me, but that's part of the concern. And right now, I've said this, and I strongly believe that I currently don't see a pathway forward for that project to go. I just don't. I've talked to Prime. I've been in the room with them. Of course I'm in the room with them, right? I'm the economic development chair of the county. That's my legislative district that this is getting built in. So of course I'm in the room with them. And I'm saying to them, look, you gotta sort something out here, because people are saying exactly what they need and want. Now, we understand, like, if it doesn't fit your financial model, then okay, you got to figure that out. But you also have to change your project to what the community wants and what the zoning board wants, because those are the laws, and the zoning board is going to adhere and make people adhere to those laws. So you got to do it, or they're going to vote no, and they should, because that's their role. That's their role, is to uphold those zoning and planning laws, however outdated they are. Those are the laws. Now, does everybody agree with those laws? No, not everybody agrees with them, but those are the laws, right? Just like you drive 30 at a 30 zone. You don't drive 45
there's a
because
process. You change the zoning and planning laws,
That's
and
right.
then you can kind of
Allegedly, we don't need to get into that area.
Yeah, right. But that's the concern for us, is this has to start with planning. It has to start with comprehensive planning, with land planning, with waterfront planning, with zoning and planning law changes. It's got to start there. And that process has got to be community driven. It can't just be a contractor or a consultant that, handpicks 10 of the same people that have contributed to the same committees over and over and over again. It's got to be community driven. It's got to be thinking about what that impact is going to be over the next 20, 30 years, and it's got to be focused on that.
How do you get the engagement of the community in the city the way you're looking at it? Like, how do you plan to cheerlead and create that energy to make that happen?
It's a vision, and it's a shared vision. You got part of it is, it's one thing for me to say, I think we should, put a 100-mile boardwalk on the beach and build out, all these marinas on the beach and put a hotel and a conference center on the beach, right? That's my vision for Plattsburgh. But it doesn't work because it's my vision. So if we start to talk about what's our shared vision and start to talk about, well, what do we want with the beach as a community? What do we want with the beach as a region? Because that's a shared resource for our region. What do we want to do with our waterfronts or our parks or recreation regionally? What do we want to do as a vision, as a regional vision, and then start to get buy-in from that? It becomes easier for us as a community to move in that direction and to get engagement and to get involvement. As a business owner, that's how we create success. Mm-hmm. It's not just, look, I got an idea for a new product, or I've got an idea for my business, how to grow my business. If it's just my idea and I don't get buy-in from my employees or buy-in from my customers, or if I think like, oh, my business should go that way, but my customers and my employees are like, wait a second, no, we don't want that. Well, and if I try to take my business that way, it's a failure. It's going to fail. So that's kind of the thinking around how do you create engagement. It's a shared vision. You create that shared vision. That's why when we say a plan for Plattsburgh, this is not my plan for Plattsburgh. This is a plan for Plattsburgh. And that's a key distinction for us, because this is not just me sitting in a room thinking, oh, you know what? We need more bike lanes. Right. Well, do I think we need more? Yes, I think we need more bike lanes. But there's a large group of people that are biking, using our streets for transportation, and they like to be outdoors, that also believe that we need bike lanes, and we do, right? So that's kind of that shared vision that you create some ownership. Yeah, community ownership.
I want to ask you something that I see publicly asked about you all the time. Is just talk about the business that you came from Seattle.
Yeah.
And why did Conroy's?
Oh, yeah. Close? Yeah, of course. So I'll just go through my career history. How about that? Sure. I'll start from the kind of
I think it's very important.
Yeah, sure. No, it's fine. It's fair.
You and I are boys, so
no, I understand. You know my background, right? Yeah, and you see it. So so in 1998, I started working in the computing center at SUNY Plattsburgh. And so I started to develop computing skills like website development and database-driven development and websites. It was very early on in the industry, too, in the late 90s. And
that was my joke earlier about things have changed. I mean, the internet kind of just came up at around 99. That just to finally close that a little bit on how much things have changed in that 21 years.
That's brilliant. Because, I mean, like in 1998, we really were just trying to tap into the power of the internet. We're selling dog food online, right? And it's like, oh, what are you doing selling dog food? Nobody's going to buy dog food online. Now it's like everybody buys dog food online, right? So, but you're spot on. Like that's a great segue and great example of how much things have changed since then. So in 2000, when I graduated in SUNY Plattsburgh, I just like every other kid that grows up here, it's like, what are you going to do with your life? And I just didn't have the opportunity to stay. Unfortunately, just like, people listening right now, their nieces and nephews, their sons and daughters who grew up here and they had to move away for work to build their career. Same way. So I ended up moving out to San Francisco, helped start a company out there, and we did very well. Even at that was the height of the .com bust at that point in around 2000. A lot of companies were going IPO and just failing. So we ended up doing very well. And we ended up moving that company to Minneapolis because there was just, all the tech companies were moving out of San Francisco. And so we said, okay, well, we're going to, we bought a company out in Minneapolis and moved the company out of Minneapolis. And after 2 years, that company sold.
It was a tech company.
It was a tech company. Yeah.
Okay.
We did a psychometric assessment. It's
Obviously.
obviously, right?
Yeah.
It's not really like, it's interesting, but that's for another topic altogether.
Psychometrics, they're happening right now.
Oh, I know. It's all the time.
That's what that meter is on the bottom.
Is
there.
that what that is? I thought it was like a charge to shock somebody. Okay. But in 2002, the company sold. And I'm sorry, 2004, the company sold. And I went into software consulting, technology management consulting. And that's what I did for from 2004 in Minneapolis. And then when I moved in 2006 to Seattle, continue to do that until I did my MBA in 2011. So that's what I was doing. Primarily my primary role in Seattle is as a tech consultant. And then 2011, I just said I'm tired of technology. It's I'm a gregarious personality, and sitting behind a desk all day long just wasn't a fit for my life or where I wanted to go, my life to go. So after 2011, after my grad school, me and a business partner started Seattle Burlap, and we ran that Seattle Burlap for 2 years before I came home. And then when I came home, I sold half the Seattle Burlap to my partner, and then here I am. Conroy's Organics was an interesting situation. We loved being up there, and when we bought the company, it was probably about, no exaggeration, $40,000 to $60,000 in the negative year over year.
Can you just explain, just in case somebody doesn't know?
It was losing. It was losing about.
Deficit.
Sorry, I meant, yeah. Can you explain what Conroy's was?
Oh yeah, sorry. It was a farm store cafe located in West Shazy.
Gotcha.
And we knew going into it that was going to be a challenging business, just because. It's
Not a lot of people up there.
Not a lot of people up there. It's kind of in the middle.
But dedicated.
That's true.
Middle of nowhere, quote unquote middle of nowhere. It really was a tourist stop, and we knew
Which has a season.
Yeah. And we knew going into
Winter is not it.
No.
Yeah, no, winter ain't it.
Yeah.
So we knew going into it that was going to be a really challenging proposition. So 2.5 years later, we had turned around to reduce that deficit to about $10,000 a year. But we also said, what's the actual model? What should this place be? And when it came down to it, it should have been a seasonal farm with a grocery store and a little cafe. And that was just not that was not a direction that we wanted to take moving forward. Just time, resource, stress level as an entrepreneur, family stress as a family-run business. And so we said, no, we're not going to do that. So we ended up closing the doors, and that was unfortunate because, we missed our customers. There was a strong group of regulars that came. We loved them. We loved the business, and it just wasn't a model that we wanted to take in that direction. So since then, we ended up opening Chapter 1 Coffee and Tea, and we've been running Chapter 1 Coffee and Tea since we closed Conroy's. And that's been since 2017, and we've been downtown ever since. So, yeah. Yeah.
Go, Matt, go.
Well, so this is obviously, I guess, a segue point. And one of the things that I'm interested to know is you mentioned kind of where you've been.
Yeah.
San Francisco, Minneapolis,
Mm-hmm.
Seattle.
Yeah.
I'm someone who follows police reform and
Oh, yeah.
and issues very closely as a criminal defense attorney, public defender. Wow. I mean, Minneapolis obviously is kind of where this whole started with George Floyd.
Well, kind of.
The 2020 iteration of
Exactly.
right.
Exactly. But that's the concern that we need to address as a community and as a nation.
Because we can go back to 2014 Ferguson. I mean,
Yeah.
what was it, 1992 Los Angeles.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
we could keep going back.
Rodney,
and
let's
back
talk about
and-
Rodney Brown, right? Like, come on, this has been going on. And, I don't often, because I think people, it's hard to say. I think people cheapen it sometimes when I say, yes, I'm a black man in this community. Most people think I'm just ambiguously brown, but I'm black. Like, that's just my ethnicity. My dad's white, my mom's black, and just as, black as anybody else in that situation. But I see it, right? I see the racism in our community. And just 2 days ago, there was a race motivated attack downtown.
I just saw that on Facebook. I'm interested to know more about
I
that.
haven't even heard.
Yeah, there was a race motivated attack downtown. So this is an ongoing issue in our community. And the way that I see it is that when black and brown people have been oppressed in our country for hundreds of years, and there are certainly institutions that are built into our society that some are inherently racism, what people might say, and some are just, look, it just treat people different based on how they look or their economic status. So it's important for us to understand that when a group of people are being oppressed or a group of people are saying, look, we're oppressed and we need help. And that's all we're asking for as a group of people that are oppressed in our country. Or anybody that's oppressed. You can be gay, transsexual, bi, whatever, that are not afforded the same rights as everyone else. And all people are asking for is, we just want to be treated equal. Just treat people equal. That's it. That doesn't mean don't treat you equal. That just means treat everybody equal. But when you see that happening, and the response to that is an outpour of hatred or an outpour of, no, we're not going to do that. We're going to, things are fine the way they are. Well, they're not fine for people. They're not fine for some people. And as humans, we need to look out for each other. We just need to. Like, this is it. Like, this is the only planet we got. And, there are people that are being oppressed, and that's not fair. That's not fair. That doesn't mean take away from you to give to them. It just means get them, bring people up with us. Make sure that they're treated fairly. Make sure that they're treated equally. And that's when we talk about there are certain institutions, there are certain professions, or there are certain, structures in place that seemingly keep people oppressed. So when you talk about reform, we're not talking about, well, we don't respect the policing, the police or public safety positions. That is a profession that I'm not brave enough to do. I have an immense amount of respect for people who have to put on a gun every day and go out into the public and risk their lives, not knowing how their day is going to end. I have an immense amount of respect for that. So I can't say, well, they're doing it wrong or they need to be reformed. What I can say is, let's have a conversation for how do we make our community better. And we rely on you and your profession to do that. We rely on police to make our community better. So how can we work together to do that? I'm on the Public Safety Review Committee for the county. And when Sheriff Favreau gave his presentation, which you probably read in the paper, it was challenging to listen to. And I know Sheriff Favreau, and I respect him. I respect him immensely.
I interviewed him on my own podcast.
Right. I respect him immensely, and I know he's a man of integrity, a dedication. And not only do I work with him legislatively, but I've worked with him personally, privately.
Sure.
Right. But it's also hard to hear because he's looking at this as an attack on his profession. And I don't look at it that way. I look at it like there are problems with the system. Let's look at how do we fix those problems? Or let's look at, are there actually problems, or have we addressed that already? And there's a communication breakdown somewhere where if we're concerned about chokeholds and escalation, is that something that's already been worked into the process? And if it has, well, great. Let's communicate that. Let's make sure people understand that. But we're not, as a community, as a small community, we're not immune to racism.
Crossbreeding, like from a health standpoint
Yeah.
to policing standpoint, when you look at quality improvement, first of all, racism and that stuff affects medical
absolutely.
care in a big way.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so when you look at things, from a kidney standpoint or health-wise, when we improve things, I always call it failure reporting. I go, I don't want to hear about the 80% where we did good. I want to know the 20% where we screwed up. And let's talk about that. And when we do our quality meetings are, and to do that, you have to have people reporting failures. So you have to, my nurses have to know, look, you're not penalized for saying you made a mistake.
Right.
These mistakes identify protocol problems, process problems,
That's
technology problems. How do we get cops and police officers and people who are servants to understand that we make mistakes, we're in a process, and if we don't report them, we can't improve the process and the training. And how and covering things up and not saying you saw something or did something doesn't allow us to improve the system. And I believe that is a core problem from how we're trained. As a physician in New York, in Vermont, you can say, I'm sorry. In New York, you're not supposed to. And I find that ridiculous.
Wow.
But honesty. My original podcast name was going to be Honest Medicine, which I think is a very, very interesting term. Yeah. But my point is how do we get police officers and how do we get the those important people who are so key to not feel flawed to say, hey, I saw something happen and I made a mistake.
Yeah.
And to bring these things up so then we can look at them at this failure reporting and then make changes that need to be made.
I really think that the more that we address the human relationship between just individuals, like somebody who chooses to go into that profession doesn't make them a particular kind of person. They just chose to go in that job. That's the job that they attracted to and they went into. But I think that there are just too many, and that goes in all kinds of directions. There's just too many automatic assumptions when you look at someone or you look at what they're wearing, and then you just make a snap judgment about what they look like, or they got a shaved head and they wear a uniform, or, they got a beard. Oh my goodness. Whoa, what's going on? Like that's part of the concern just that we have as a society. That's just our however we've evolved this society, that is natural that we do that. So the more conversation we have, the more community engagement we have, the more community involvement we have as leaders and politicians and healthcare providers and lawyers, the more we break down those kinds of stereotypical barriers, because it's, the easy thing is to just look at somebody and just apply whatever filter just naturally comes to you. The more difficult thing is to say, he's got a mom, he's got a dad, he grew up somewhere, he probably struggled with something, and more likely than not, that person is more like me than more different than me. And just taking that, and I think for my personal philosophy,
so then do you think that kind of sensitivity training is important to have as part of the training for instance, police officers?
I think any level of training,
because
implicit bias, even like
the current administration is trying to get rid of.
Yeah, I know. That's
I know they don't believe in this
federally, right? They don't want to fund that type of training for states and localities. Yeah, it's troubling.
But it's also needed. I mean, like any training you can get to make you, any training that you can receive that makes you better at what you do, hands down, right? And it's just then a matter of having the leaders understand that value proposition for their staff or for their community or for their municipality. So as long as you can convey that in a way that's like, okay, yeah, do we need implicit bias training? There are certain industries that do. There are certain professions that absolutely do need implicit bias training because, again,
everyone.
It's there you go. It's just natural for us to make those judgments, and it's not just looking at a brown person and making a judgment. It's looking at an old person and making a judgment. Looking at a student. Geez, we do it to students all the time here. God forbid if a group of students are walking down the street, automatically we're like, what are they up to? Up to no good.
Gen Z kids these days, they're all lazy.
Those millennials on their phones and lazy. Ugh.
But now we're millennials, like entering into. I don't know. Are you about that age?
No, I'm like 45.
Okay.
I'm old.
You look
I'm
young,
old.
but
I'm older.
I'm one of those.
That's funny. Somebody else said, "Man, you look like you're 30 something." I was like, "I'll take it."
But I'm one of those older millennials that's kind of coming into power, and I think what we're seeing is kind of a generational divide, quite frankly.
Exactly.
And I guess I don't want to spend too much time on this, but to maybe answer Craig's question, as someone who's been engaged in the trenches with law enforcement and actually tried to reform the way we police around drug and substance abuse through the Spark Coalition, I helped with Simon, kind of steer the subcommittee toward diversionary tactics and to see what we could do as far as reforming our community.
That's right.
I have to tell you, just honestly, I don't think the system can be reformed. As someone who's tried to reform it multiple times, and to your question, Craig, I've never in my career ever seen an officer apologize ever for anything.
Yeah.
I was joking yesterday that someone posted the Vermont State Police. They posted kind of an ominous, threatening post about we are protectors of the night, and they apologized for that. And I joked, this is literally the first time I've ever seen a police department apologize for anything ever. And you kind of alluded to it with the
In
laws
medicine,
too,
right.
how stupid that is.
Yeah.
Right. And I think, Chris, you referenced it about communication, right?
Yep.
This is the breakdown of trust, right? Is that we have a culture and a philosophy within law enforcement. They are never willing to admit that they do anything wrong. And I'm talking about everyone in the system. When I went through that district attorney, everyone I'm talking about, probation department, no one saw a significant issue with the way that we were policing relative to drug addiction. And I was frustrated because within the drug addiction community, a lot of people are like, yeah, we should treat this as a public health crisis, right? Like let's keep these people in the treatment. The whole thing about what I was trying to push with law enforcement assisted diversion, which actually started in Seattle, and I was trying to kind of pilot a program here where you actually empower police officers to give them more discretion. Instead of filing charges against them for small level possession of a controlled substance, cocaine or, a Suboxone or gabapentin, whatever it is that you want to say, these, out of prescription pharmaceuticals, pills, hydroxy that people are obviously addicted to, and we're dealing with an opioid and drug addiction crisis. Right. Let's treat this as a public health crisis, and instead of maybe filing charges against them, give them the opportunity to go into treatment. Yeah. Get into Champlain Valley Family Center. We've got our opportunities for treatment have expanded so much in the last 5 years with Champlain Valley Family Center and the recovery campus.
But to interject some, I don't want to. Part of it is that concern about painting a whole swath of people with a broad brush, right? And
I hear what you're saying, but Chris, just respectfully,
I understand. I'm not in that profession, right? I'm not in your profession. I'm not in public safety in the sense of like I don't carry a gun and a badge, and I don't.
There's good cops, but what I'm saying is the culture is so boy club-ish, and that's a problem too. The diversity that we have in policing. Yeah. I was thinking, preparing for this, I lived in the city for a long time. I was an attorney. I don't know if I ever saw a black cop on the Plattsburgh City Police Force. Yeah. Ever. Yeah. Right? Like there's almost no women. We're getting better, but I think this is the issue is that, I think that you can reform almost everything about the police system, in my opinion. And what the problem I have is when we look at police reform, the Overton window, which we're talking about, of what's even publicly acceptable of talking about in public, I kind of challenge you a little bit about on this is, I think what you're saying is we need to look at the way we police and maybe reallocate resources to more community, more caseworkers, things. I think you were trying to take a more holistic approach, but you don't want to use the verbiage of defund the police. And I think this is where I get frustrated because it seems unacceptable to say something like defund the police. Obviously, Sheriff Favreau came out very strongly and said, even as a maybe quasi-progressive Democratic county sheriff, he can't even live with that as being on the table. So I guess that's my frustration is when I'm dealing with this population, which seems unwilling to change, when all their public statements are basically like, we're not going to change, like we're not changing anything, like.
But it seems like that's the problem. I mean, do you feel that the only way to make those changes is to defund, collapse, and then like recreate it? Because it's not fixable.
This isn't going to be a popular opinion, but my answer is yes. Right. Like I'm actually one of the few people who believes in abolish the police. And give me a brief second to explain it because I think it's going to be important. Because when you look historically at modern day policing, a lot of it can actually be traced to the slave patrols in the South and even in Boston. I mean, I'm following a lot of progressive, Black Lives Matter activists who are, I think, trying to educate the public about like the 1619 Project and where, slavery and, servitude started in this country, and, the slight progress we made at those inflection points of the Civil War and the Emancipation Proclamation, but then we moved into Jim Crow, right? And then once we broke Jim Crow, then it turned into the war on drugs and just packing federal and state prisons with black and brown people. And my frustration is that where modern day policing started was the slave patrols. It was white supremacy. So that's the root of where it starts. And I think there's no admission of that. I don't think we've really educated the population about that history. And I don't know how we start over again, because again, I worked with Dave Favreau. I think he's a reasonable person. I think he's a good professional. I think philosophically he's wrong on almost everything about the war on drugs and the way that we treat that. Chief Levi Ritter of the City Police Department, I worked with him. I think he's the best that we have. And that's what I think is frustrating to me, is I think we have almost the best that we possibly could right now as our local law enforcement. Even I'll give a shout out to Dave Reynolds in Essex County, Republican. He runs a really tight ship down there and does a good job with the jail. Even with, I think, reasonable, responsible, sober law enforcement officials, even defund the police is offensive to them. And they come back and they, make it as like a public safety issue. We're all going to suffer from this. And it's frustrating to me, because I've seen generations of poor people and people of color and people who are mentally ill just get destroyed by the system. Just their lives, their entire families are destroyed. And, what they really need is case management. They need work on alcoholism and substance abuse and domestic violence. And we need more focus on those situations. And, quite frankly, we don't talk about the fact that we have such a heavily invested law enforcement community here, with Border Patrol and with docks and with having a significant amount of our state's incarceration facilities up here. And we almost use that as kind of an economic development for the North Country for a long time. And I feel like we need to talk about this, because these vestiges are still here. And maybe the last thing I'll say is, whenever I look at my NBC5 or Press Republican articles on racial issues, racially sensitive issues, almost always, and I can screenshot for viewers, for listeners, whatever, the most racist response that you could expect from a population is almost always, almost invariably in my NBC5 reactions, the most popular, whatever the most racist one. Like, we have to talk about the racism here. And I think what's so important now is, I think the city of Plattsburgh is kind of like a bit of, it's a diverse place. We have the SUNY campus. It's kind of, and I hate to use this word, but I do think that in some ways it's got
a cosm of diversity.
Well, it's kind of a sanctuary where people can feel safer. I mean, I want to go back to one of the first gay Republican mayors we had here.
Sure. Right.
We have a history here of being against hate, and I want to be able to move in that direction, because I feel like the culture here is very proudly anti-hate. But I do feel that culturally and within law enforcement, there has to be a recognition of the history, and that maybe less is more. Maybe we do need to reinvent or relook at the way that we deal with these populations. We have NAMI, we have Behavioral Health Services North. We throw so much money at policing, and yet we throw so little, at community resources, at preventative issues, and that's what I want to see more of.
I was just going to say that in so many things, and this is another one of these things where you got to listen to bad ideas, because if you don't listen to all the ideas and bad ideas, sometimes, we have the convergent information, which is what we all know. Lives are being unraveled with people who have mental illness and drug addiction and other things, and they have some contact with police, and they end up in a bad situation. The divergent information is like, how do we totally flip this around and change it? And the way you do it is you take the people who are making that impact, that meeting up, the police officer meeting up with this person, and you put them on the back end, and they have some kind of rotation that they have to do at BHSN or in the drug addiction section, and that you make it mandatory so that people are cross-trained, so that this police officer who's meeting up with a person has had a month of rounding with schizophrenics and has had experience and said, oh my God, I know I've seen this. I remember that case. And then it changes how you approach things, because there's no cross training going on. These people don't understand the back end of the story, which is what you're seeing, trying to bail somebody out of some nightmarish situation they got into at a simple little low level thing that just pummeled their life. So I don't know. I think there's ways. My feeling is, in an open approach, there are ways to make those changes without, I mean, defunding, I think changing funding, or maybe even more funding, because maybe in many ways we're putting the money in the wrong place. What we want is better policing.
If I can just pick up on that briefly, I mean, my ideal policing situation would be professional policing. And I don't want to, and this is going to come off, I'm sure, negative to a lot of people, but they have roughly a 26-week training, 6 months of training for New York State Police. I mean, to be a lawyer, I need to get an undergraduate degree. I need to go to law school for 3 years, and then I have to pass the bar examination. And I'm not putting people in jail on sometimes, bad information or cross-referencing information. I mean, I think we highly need to professionalize the police way more than we do now, pay them way more than we do. Yeah. I think that's the way to go. But I don't know how you get from where we are now to there without seriously tailoring it back and just looking at how we do it and just having that conversation, because we need to have police in the conversation. But Absolutely. My frustration is that they need to be open-minded, and I haven't seen that yet.
Yeah, when it comes down to it, wholesaling, say, defund the police to make reform or changes is not the direction that I would go. There is certainly a conversation for improving our society. And given that, our police force and public safety force are putting their lives on the line and they see the worst of the worst, having them help redefine that is certainly the key, right? It's required. They need to have a seat at the table. They're the ones that know day in and day out. Do they need to be open-minded just like everybody else does, right? We all need to say, yeah, we can do better. How does that happen without a feeling of, well, if you're admitting that you can do better, that means you're doing something wrong now. No, that's not the case, right? We have to go into that conversation open-minded. I don't have a solution to that. I also know that as a community, because we have seen more of this opioid pandemic and opioid crisis, our approach has been different. Our approach isn't just arrest and jail. Sometimes it's arrest, and sometimes it's then rehabilitation, because there needs to be a level of punishment, or whatever you want to call it, for somebody who breaks the law. But there also needs to be some level of rehabilitation to ensure that they don't do it again. And if that means drugs or alcohol rehabilitation, that's part of it. If it means job rehabilitation or job training to get them back into society, then that's also part of it. But I don't have the answer. I would just say my first reaction isn't to just say completely take the money away from the cops and let's figure out where it should go.
I think you're setting the problem though right there, respectfully, Chris. That's not at all what I said. I did kind of say ideally, like I made two different things. I said ideally I would like to get to an abolish the police system where police do very little of almost nothing in the traditional way that we think of policing. I mean, you already referenced the gun issue, and I know this is somewhat controversial too. I don't necessarily think all police should have guns on them, right? I think that we have way too many guns in our area and way too many police that have guns. And I've specifically seen situations where police show up with guns and then it escalates and it becomes something that it wouldn't have become without guns. And I mean, we're not going to solve it here because we're so far apart. Yeah. But that's not at all what I'm saying, and that's not what anyone who's saying defund the police is saying. So I think you're mischaracterizing, respectfully, the defund the police message and what they're saying. I think really what they're saying is we need to reallocate resources, and maybe even within the police department. That's something we can talk about. I think we need more caseworkers, and maybe even caseworkers working with police officers.
I think you're bringing up a good point, Matt, in terms of that the argument is that we're not understanding where each other are coming from.
Yes.
And the defund the police is a trigger statement that absolutely most people feel is like, we don't need police officers.
Because that's the way law enforcement is characterizing it. And and they always win these arguments because they shift the Overton window, which I referenced earlier.
And I think your point is very well taken in that the point is that it's not about that. It's about caseworkers. It's about improved training. It's about changing the dynamic of how that happens.
Maybe bringing domestic violence advocates to a domestic violence situation, and maybe not just have police officers who show up with guns, right? Like, let's actually talk about how, like, you know, I was so frustrated when I was doing a case and cross-examining someone, and I was like, well, what's your approach when you have a domestic incident? And they were like, well, we take a statement. And I was like, from both people? I said, well, I said, do you have a policy? I don't know. And I'm like, we don't even have a policy for how we deal with domestic violence situations,
But these are the points. You're highlighting the key. These are the failures, and this is failure reporting. And why isn't it that the person said that person who was called to this thing said, look, I was called here. We have no protocol on how to handle this.
I don't understand why they don't take statements from both people as contemporaneous as possible to the
They
events.
would if there was a protocol and these people were trained that said, look, when you go to this particular situation, these are the two forms that you fill out, one from this person and one from that person. I mean, these are things where it's like, this stuff, you could write software to do this
and
better
give
than
them
people
skills,
do
give
it.
them a number to like stop domestic violence or this or that, right? Like, we just don't do enough up front as far as giving resources. And, you know, it's just really frustrating to me because
but I think these come down to three things, and it's a little different. It's people, process, and technology. The people is the police officers and the caseworkers and the people involved in how we apply this. The process is having good processes in place to drive those things. And then the technology is the mechanism on how this stuff is reviewed, the data is gathered, and then we can go back and look, are we doing a good job or a bad job? And I mean, these are things we're not going to answer at this table today, but it is really interesting to get Chris's insight and what your thoughts are.
It's one of those things we as a society and community we can improve always, and that's what it comes down to. How we do that, it needs to be a community-driven conversation with experts at the table with a diverse, look, it even means diverse, having different discussions or having different diverse points of view and diverging points of view, but. When it comes down to it, bring people to the table. Let's figure out what the problem is, and we can solve that. I think that's done through communication and collaboration. So, yeah,
excellent.
There's that.
Thank you. I appreciate that, and I appreciate because these are
Yeah.
hard questions, and I appreciate
They
that you're willing to deal with them because.
I love the discussion. I think it's great, and your passion, and that's why you're here.
And I get that I'm an outlier too, but at the same time, I feel
you have a depth of knowledge and an insight into these problems that most of us.
Well,
don't
almost no
have.
one will use the abolish the police narrative, and I just want people to be aware of it and get into some of the research around what that means. And I'm not necessarily putting abolish in all the hashtags, but I do think that. Our system is kind of cruel with the way we deal with people, and and I see it every day. And I just think that we need to take a much more human approach to this. And so I'm hopeful that everything you're saying sounds great, and even Scott Beebe, to a certain extent, what he's saying some good things. I just want to see some follow through and some community involvement. And I can't say I've had enough opportunity to look at the review coalition, or I know CORE has been involved. There's like on every Monday at 4 there's the
city has their own public safety review committee.
So
yeah,
it's in the works, and I know that some good people are working on that. I want some progress, and I feel like a lot of people who are on the side of criminal justice reform have been waiting too long for too little progress. So I'll end it on that.
Cool.
Interesting.
Yeah.
What did we miss? I mean, Chris, so obviously we have
turkey. Yeah, I mean,
we have a huge election coming up. I mean, federally, we know it's super important. Regionally, we're used to hearing this is the most important election of our lifetimes. But this time, I don't think anyone would admit that it's not true. This is so important. So November 3rd.
Yeah.
What are you telling voters? What should they care about, and what's your pitch to voters?
October 24th is when early polls open, right? And people are already, people have already requested their absentee ballots, and those absentee ballots have gone out, and they'll get their ballot in the mail and mail it back, right? Military ballots are already coming in, and early polls open on the 24th, right? So polls will be open for a week and a half, I think, or a week, and then regular voting starts on Tuesday, November 3rd, right? It is important. I think certainly what I'm telling voters is that you're going to hear me and my opponent say the same thing. You are. You're just going to hear us talking about tourism. You're going to hear us talking about collaboration with the town. You're going to hear us talking about, community involvement and bringing people to the table and transparency. We're going to talk about that. We're running for office. You're not going to hear a candidate running for office say, no, I'm not going to work with the town of Plattsburgh. I'm going to keep my door closed and we're going to just bring my friends in and make all the decisions. You're not going to hear that, right? But what we need as a community is not just rhetoric and platitudes. We need action. We need action. We don't need to find the bottom of the crisis before we take action. That to me sounds like letting the boat sink to the bottom of a lake before you start bailing it out. You got to take action now. We're in the crisis. You can't wait for the crisis to end. So you'll see me talk about experience. You talk about a plan, something that's tangible, something that you can read, put your hands on, look at, something that you can expect from me from day one. And I think that's key. I think that's key for our community to understand who's ready to lead, not just, who can say, yeah, I'm ready, but who's actually ready. And that comes down to experience. It comes down to plan. It comes down to something tangible. And that's going to be I think that's going to be the biggest challenge for voters to understand that, because both of us are well known. Both of us are, from here. We've, been in the community for quite some time, and that will be the challenge, I think. Yeah. Nationally, I tell people, for the most part, right, we don't see national politics impact us locally, but this is different, right? Considering that we're in the middle of a pandemic, which is also why I say, look, the
president came here too, to this area.
I know, exactly. Which is why I say normally we're immune to a lot of the federal politics right? That doesn't impact us, but it's different. We've been advocating, I certainly have been advocating and met with Senator Gillibrand on advocating for direct, unencumbered federal aid to municipality. That's right to our city coffers to help us out of this. Does that mean 100% replacement of what we've lost? No, but it does mean some money to help us through this, and that's what we need. And it impacts us federally, and that's going to depend on who becomes the next president. The border closure, that is also a federal, decision, even though it's been primarily on the Canadian side, but still, that impacts, that's a federal decision that impacts us locally. And that will likely also change come the election. So even though that the majority of the people come out to vote for federal election, my message is vote local. You got to vote local. The decisions that we're making as a local elected body are impacting you day to day. We're defining what roads are paved. We're defining what projects are funded, how money is allocated to different departments, right? So these are the decisions that we make locally. So voting local, you have way more of a say in your day-to-day life than voting for the next president or voting for the next congresswoman. So that's really is the message as well. And it's not just the 2020 election, it's the 2021 and 2022. And, we almost have an election every year locally, right? We had an election just last year. So that's key. That really is key. And it's key to get out to vote, because that's one of the easiest ways to make your voice heard. The other thing is I want to talk about the millennial and the younger voters, because this is something that I spoke to a couple of younger groups, younger adults about. Your participation as a young person in our community is greatly desired and needed now, not 20 years from now. Because again, when I say we're making decisions that are impacting you and the rest of your life for 20 years, that's not an anecdote, right? $38 million into our airport is defining what our airport's going to look like for the next 20, 30 years. So as a young voter, be involved now. Your leadership is needed now, not in 10, 20 years from now. And unfortunately, we talk about younger people as the next generation of leaders rather than I look at younger people as the current generation of leaders that just haven't taken on leadership opportunities or haven't taken or come into their leadership role in our community, whatever that looks like, either in their business or in the community or in volunteerism or something like that. So that's the other thing is we need their voice now, not 10, 20 years from now. We need their voice now, because when you talk about that diversity of voices or the diversity of conversation, young people bring just a different viewpoint in how we should be running our society, how we should be running our community, but their voices are grossly missing. A lot of it is because, older generations, they look at younger people as the next generation versus this current generation, and there's not a lot of room being made for them to step into those roles. So part of their responsibility as a young person is to come and show up consistently, find out who's making decisions, how can they, find out how can they make the decisions, because it's easy. It is easy. It's a lot easier than I think people realize in terms of contributing and making those decisions. And that's the key for our future as a community, as a society, is to have young people right now understand that they're leaders now, not, after they graduate college or after they get started up or ramped up in their career. Yeah.
You actually hit on something before we started. Was the city does the YouTube channel where you can watch. Does the county do that?
The county does not do that.
How come?
I just don't think we have the technology set up for it. Yeah.
I mean, we're in a world now where everything's like zoomed.
Yeah, I know.
You should be doing it.
I know. Yeah, that's interesting. I mean, like the county has not.
And you're the technology dude.
Well, yeah.
Let's get on that.
Yeah, I know.
So how do you feel like that has impacted, and how you're using technology to be able to work with some of these other, people you're networking with, like with the town?
Yeah.
I mean, are you guys meeting? I mean, in medicine, executive board meetings and all sorts of meetings have been canceled, and we're trying to figure out ways of how do we all get together?
Yeah.
Like it's a problem.
Well, we have to leverage technology now,
Yeah,
right?
for
Like
sure.
that's just what we do. And even campaigning, that's what we're primarily doing, is leveraging technology to reach out to voters, That's not the only way, but that certainly is the easiest way to do it. But, I mean, like we just had a meeting with a bunch of town supervisors a couple weeks, maybe a week and a half ago, about chargebacks from the county. So the county charges municipalities for services that we provide, voting and assessment services. And part of it is the concern for the lack of income for these municipalities and the amount of money that the county has to charge for them. So again, talk about getting people in the room in a collaborative way to hear concerns and to figure out how can we process and move forward as a region, as a community, to make things better for everybody. But yeah, we have to leverage. I mean, like that would have been an in-person meeting,
Right.
But you just can't, right?
No.
You can't meet with 20 people in the room. And so you have to leverage technology in a way that makes sense. I don't know why we don't do live, or, actually we do have one counselor or one legislator that does record them and post the meetings on his kind of like blog or vlog or channel. Yeah. Hometown Cable, Calvin Castine. Legislator
That would be
Castine.
great, though, right? I
Very
mean, we're
well.
talking about transparency and getting people involved, and it
Engagement.
seems almost
Yeah.
basic, right? We would love to see more of that,
Yeah.
but it's a two-way street, right? I mean,
Yeah.
I think the sad part is we don't have a public outcry of like, why isn't this here? Like, there haven't been change.org petitions. Like, why hasn't the Clinton County Legislature gone online? So it's a two-way street, and I think that's what we need to talk about is bringing everyone together and having those conversations. So, I mean, I'm really impressed with what you said. I think that, voters obviously have a very clear choice in November and perhaps even late October. I mean, voters get a plan together. I mean, that's something. And I think maybe the last thing I want you to do, Chris, is just to direct people. I think you referenced a plan for Plattsburgh. Where is it? How can we find it?
Yeah, rosenquestforplattsburgh.com. You can get there, download the plan for Plattsburgh. There's a bunch of other resources on the website as well. We talk about the DRI. We talk about housing. We talk about the annexation. That's probably going to be the next hot button thing to discuss when it comes to, who's going to be ready to make some decisions on day one. But rosenquestforplattsburgh.com, you can hit our YouTube channel, you can hit Facebook, you can hit Twitter, our Instagram from that site. Give me a call as well, and then that's kind of how we can all connect.
What do you need right now,
For
campaign-wise?
I mean, like right now, it's just there's just like a strong outreach, and that's really primarily where we need to be focused on, and responsibly being able to do that. But the campaign is going well. We do have a strong outpouring of support. We've had a handful of house parties, COVID friendly, responsibly distanced, socially distanced with masks. But yeah, that's going well. We're still very positive about the campaign. But yeah, we're excited. We're excited to see what the future holds for us.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Chris Rosenquest, thank you so much for being
doubt.
here
Thank
and
you.
speaking with us. And Matt Waite and Damian Battinelli, and I'm Craig Hurwitz.
Thanks,
Thanks
Chris.
again.
Thank you.